Hi, I'm Dr. George Yancey. Let's share some paradigms. And the paradigm I want to share today is the racial vicious cycle. And I only want to shatter that paradigm, ideally I like to shatter the racial vicious cycle. What do I mean by this? I've observed a certain cycle of how things happen when it concerns racial issues. It goes something like this. You'll have some sort of incident, and that incident will lead to a protest. And then that protest will eventually lead to a counter-protest. And then counter-protest will die down and we'll get to, what you call it equilibrium, where things are kind of where they're normally at. And then you have another racial incident, protest, counter-protest, equilibrium, so forth and so on. Let me give you an example of this. And I've talked about this in other videos. If you've seen some of my other videos on race, you probably know where I'm going. 2020, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, racial incident. Now, to be sure, this was not the first time we've had the taking of a life of an African American that led to a racial incident. So, this is what I mean, the cycle. I mean, it's happened before. Trayvon Martin, those sort of things. Then you have the protests. 2020, summer of a lot of protests. And then 2021, you started seeing a counter-protest building, and it manifests itself a lot at school board meetings where people are talking about CRT and this sort of thing. And then that sort of died down, and you sort of had a little bit of equilibrium. Now, I'm going to go into what's happened after that in a few minutes, but a couple things happened during this. First, we saw the emergence of the anti-racist movement. It had already been around, but it wasn't well known or people weren't heavily supportive of it. 2020, it was the thing. The most popular books had to be anti-racist, white fragility. So you want to talk about race. They were, they were anti-racist books. You had everyone wanting to do anti-racism, businesses, government organizations, education were anti-racist. So you had, the protests. Then you had the counter-protests with, all the anti-CRT. So it was popular, but the popularity then ignited this sort of backlash against it. Anti-racism in its popularity got a lot of resources. Millions of dollars sent to anti-racism centers, programs, just a ton of resources. People were very supportive. So anti-racism enjoyed its day in the sun. Counter-protest has largely dissipated that energy. Now companies, not all, many companies are going back on what they said about diversity and anti-racism. There's been controversies, certain Black Lives Matter and other controversies. One could say that the election of Trump, in part, there's many issues, in part, was a backlash to anti-racism and the efforts to do anti-racism. So it had its heyday, and now we've seen this backlash give it a real gut punch. And so today, people are almost, and I know this because when I've discussed racial issues to corporations, to organizations, there's a fear of being seen as not necessarily anti-racist, but CRT or DEI or woke. And schools and corporations, everyone is pulling back from all that. And so the cycle goes on. Now, here's the interesting thing. We're seeing that cycle again. As far as incidents, there were, I guess one could say, to some degree, the shooting of Charlie Kirk has really cemented this movement, but it happened before then. It happened during the course of the campaign of Trump, and didn't help obviously, you know, one of the things that probably helped to fuel even more was when Trump was attacked by an assassination attempt. And so his popularity in part was attacking what he called woke, which was CRT, which was racial ideas of racial justice, of racial progressive ideology. You know, that sort of set off this sort of protest. The protests we're seeing, not always protests in the streets, but protests as far as a lot of activism against DEI, against attempts at racial progressive programs. You know, we've seen this emerge. And today, those who advocate colorblindness advocate the argument that we should ignore race, that we don't need any extra efforts to deal with institutional racism. They kind of have control of the culture to a certain extent right now. There's resistance, but they kind of control the culture. I can tell you, people are afraid of this group, of being labeled woke, of having the power, the cultural power they have, lash out against them. So, what do I say? I say to those who are in the middle of that power, your power is temporary, just like it was for the anti-racists. There will be something that will motivate people to lash back at you, and you'll be out of power. And chances are the people that you are attacking today will be back in power and will start the racial vicious cycle all over again. So, this is kind of depressing that we're going to go from incident to incident, from movement to movement, and have protests, counter-protests. How do we break this sort of vicious cycle? I would suggest the only way we can is not by trying to beat our opponents into the dirt. But there is a way we can overcome it. Before I discuss that, let me just say that if this discussion is interesting to you, if you enjoy this topic or other topics that I engage in, check out my playlist. Consider liking this video. Consider subscribing. Consider thinking about the sort of discussions we can have. I'm trying to create a place where we can discuss issues like this that don't fit into nice and easy narratives on the left or the right. Especially as Christians, I think we should transcend that. And so consider subscribing. Consider coming back to see more videos. I hope that you enjoy this conversation, and I hope that you'll consider just come in and be a part of the conversation. So how do we get past this? I argue that the way we get past this is by engaging in collaborative conversations. In other videos, I define this as conversations where we build on each other's ideas to try to find solutions that we can all agree with. When our group has the upper hand, that is the exact time we need a collaborative conversation approach. Because now we could use our power against the others. Instead, we invite them into a conversation to find solutions that we'll work on together. Instead of our solutions, today is those who approach it from a colorblind perspective, and the solution is to dismantle everything that's DEI, everything that's anti-racist, everything that's critical race theory in their vision. You know what? When they're out of power, and those who approach anti-racism gain power again, they're just going to put those programs back up there again. What you dismantle, they will rebuild. Then you'll get power and you'll dismantle, they'll get power and they'll rebuild. Is this what you want? Or you can bring people together and say, okay, what are your concerns? How can we address them and address our concerns? How can we work together? And I know there's a temptation to think that, well, when they get power, they're going to do what they want anyways. But if you already worked with them, you've come to agreement. And they know that if they break the agreement, when you get power, you will destroy what they have. They'll actually have an incentive to work with you when they have power. I can't guarantee that, but I think it's a much better approach than our scorched earth policy that we tend to have on both sides. Let's find out how we can work together instead of against each other to break this terrible cycle that keeps us trapped in fighting against each other instead of with each other and for each other. Hope you've enjoyed this. And once again, I hope you do come back. We have more discussions. We can shatter some more paradigms.